Bonjour. We are a week away from the most oralist fight night main event and number one contenders fight the world has ever seen. Nassourdine Imavov takes on Ciao Borralho this week in Paris. And it's time for me to give my breakdown and predictions for every single fight on this stacked fight night card. Although we don't have any pay-per-views this month, the cards are looking pretty dang solid. This week, next week's, the Perth card as well. Actually, next week's card isn't that amazing, but this one is really good. This is a stacked fight night card. Benoit Saint Denis versus Mauricio Ruffy. We have a lot of solid fights. Okay, I don't know why Bellagioki and Mason Jones is the feature fight. I feel like Patricio Pitbull is there. You've got a lot of other good fighters. Andreas, the Madman Gustafsson, is there. You've got a lot of fighters that could have been in that feature spot. But before we get into it, reminder again, coming soon is the fitness video series, the members section of this channel. I am going to be doing a 1 or 2 month video series, reaction videos, tier lists, vlogs, full day of eating, as an addition to my programs, my fitness programs like the cookbook, the ultimate lifting program, and the beginner program. Again, for people that have bought those programs, if you guys would like, in addition to that, the video series is coming soon. I will be slowly rolling out videos. It's been in the making for a little bit of time now, so that's going to be coming very soon. Stay on the lookout for that. And if you haven't tried out any of my programs and you're interested in trying out some of the programs, the link to the cookbook and my lifting programs is in the description. But without further ado, let's get into this. Shauna Bannon versus Sam Hughes. I have to say, I'm going to be honest, guys. I can hardly contain myself. I actually just got done filming a 2.5 hour, I actually believe it was 2 hours, 36 minutes to the dot, breakdown on the boxing channel for Shauna Bannon versus Sam Hughes. We actually did an interview with Shauna Bannon and her coach. That is around the 30-minute segment of that video. And they are very prepared for Sam Hughes. Now, obviously, Sam Hughes is going to have the tough cookie advantage. Shauna Bannon, I've said this before, she looks like a girl that's dressing up as a girl that would fight in the UFC. She looks like she's wearing a UFC women's Halloween costume. But Shauna Bannon is really ready, dude. Shauna Bannon is ready to go out there and put on a banging, man. I think Shauna Bannon wins this by decision. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds. If you guys want to check it out on the boxing channel, of course, every week I do a prediction on the boxing channel for more hardcore fights. But I will say this, Sam Hughes, she's got arm punches. So she's going to come in there and throw some arm punches. She is looking to grapple, but I'm going to favor the 7-1 record of Shauna Bannon, coming off of a head kick KO win, I believe. I believe. I should be sure after a 2 hour and 30-minute breakdown. I'm just so hype for this fight. But I'm going to pick Shauna Bannon, man. Let's get on to the next one. Brad Tavares, the king of takedown defense, takes on Robert Bryczek. Poor man's Mateusz Gamrot came into the UFC with a little bit of hype on him. I picked him to beat Ihor Potieria. It's been about 1.5 years since this guy's UFC debut again. Came into the UFC with a little bit of hype. Sort of has that Gamrot-esque look to him. Of course, he is from Poland. That's obviously part of it. But losing to Ihor Potieria is someone that in his own right couldn't really squeak out a win to save his life. And Robert Bryczek kind of looked super mediocre. And if you're looking super mediocre in front of someone that is barely able to stay in the UFC, I think he may have been cut. I don't know. I got to go with the vet, the crafty Brad Tavares. He's got takedown defense. He may not be the best striker, but again, I think his striking is going to hold up just fine against someone that looked kind of mediocre against Ihor Potieria. So Robert Bryczek, I don't know, man. I just, nothing stands out the board. He has a youth advantage. He barely has a reach advantage. I mean, I'm going with Brad Tavares. I'm going to pick Tavares to win via having a wealth of experience in the striking, and I don't see Robert Bryczek taking down Tavares, who is known for his takedown defense. Let's get on to the next one. Sam Patterson versus Trey Waters. Interesting fight, but I am going to pick Sam Patterson. At one time, Sam Patterson was looked at as, the Casper the Ghost, chinny chin chin, guy that's going to get knocked out. But since then, he's on a 4-fight win streak. I believe he's won 4 of his last 5. Okay? Every single one of those wins by finish, either submission or TKO. I think he's got 2 submissions, 2 TKOs. Sam Patterson's a finisher. Trey Waters, pretty good. He had a really entertaining fight against Billy Ray Goff, and he won that because he had the reach advantage. But this is not a fight in which he's going to have a reach advantage. Both fighters tall for the weight class. Sam Patterson 6'3", Trey Waters 6'5". So both of them are going to be headed into a fight against another tall, rangy opponent. They're not used to that. But I am going to go with Sam Patterson because I believe when it gets to this level in the UFC, where you're not that close to the rankings, but both guys are on a bit of a win streak, I always favor the fighter that is getting consistent finishes. And we're not just talking 2. Like Sam Patterson has 4 finishes in a row. He's dangerous on the feet, but he has a submission game. And Trey Waters, he doesn't seem that powerful. I have not seen any impressive grappling from him, and I'm going to give Sam Patterson the edge in this fight because he's a finisher, and he's shown me that he's super dangerous on the ground. A more well-rounded fighter, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with Sam Patterson by decision. By decision. All of that to say he's going to win by decision, right? Maybe Sam Patterson gets this one done by finish. I'm picking Sam Patterson by finish. I don't know why I said by decision. Okay? I think Sam Patterson could get the submission here. Let's get on to William Gomis versus Robert Ruchala. Robert Ruchala, man. He's an absolute marauder, man. I'm not going to sit there and act like I know who Robert Ruchala is, and I don't want anyone else to clown me and call me a casual. I'm not a casual because I don't know who Robert Ruchala is. I'm sorry, I'm just not. William Gomis is going to win this fight. I think William Gomis, coming off of a loss to Haider Emil, by the way, one of the best marauders in the UFC. Haider Emil recently KO'd, but William Gomis, his last fight was against Haider Emil. He lost by decision, but he should have won. I think that was a robbery. I'm picking William Gomis, drop down in competition against someone that's not even made their UFC debut. It's not like William Gomis has been fighting the cream of the crop in the featherweight division, but in my opinion, he still has not had a legit loss in the UFC. Again, I think the last fight that he had was a robbery. William Gomis, super fast, elusive striker, showcased a little bit of grit against Haider Emil, which was actually pretty good. A lot of people thought that as soon as someone were to take some grit to him, that he would break because he's got one of those like, oh, never hit me style. He's just afraid to get hit kind of styles. But he showcased that he was able to take some big punches from Haider Emil, and I like that he's capable of being gritty when he absolutely needs to. I'm picking William Gomis in this fight by decision in William Gomis fashion. Let's get on to Andreas Gustafsson versus Rinat Fakhretdinov. I am going with Andreas Gustafsson. I believe in Andreas Gustafsson. I believe in the X factor of Andreas Gustafsson. And although Rinat Fakhretdinov has fought and faced and beat much better levels of competition, okay, because I'll be honest, Andreas Gustafsson, he's like the world's #1 marauder. I don't think I've ever seen anyone impose their will as much as Andreas Gustafsson. His style is 100% imposing of his will, and his will is to live in the clinch and to actively whoop your ass in the clinch. He's not one of these little pit-pat strikers in the clinch. He mauls people in the clinch. He is constantly mauling people, but he has a smothering style. And again, to be fair, Rinat Fakhretdinov, even the people that he's beat, and he's beat a lot of people, I think they would all beat Chaos Williams as well. I think Dalby would beat Chaos Williams. I think Aleski dos Santos would beat Chaos Williams. Carlos Leal would probably beat Chaos Williams. And I know Rinat Fakhretdinov got robbed. He robbed Carlos Leal. Not him, but the judges. He didn't actually win that fight. But in hindsight, we were really hyping up Carlos Leal. And to be fair, he did look sick in that fight. And Rinat fought really well, which is kind of why it was even more impressive that Leal beat him. But, Leal just got knocked out by the king of Kung Fu. He just got knocked by Muslim Salikov. And that's not the best look, okay? And he didn't have great defense. But still, Chaos Williams, I feel like we may be overhyping Andreas Gustafsson, but we cannot deny that there is that X factor. And if there's anyone that is strong enough and has the physicality and the size to match a big welterweight like Rinat Fakhretdinov, who can wrestle, he is one of those fighters with the OV, EV at the end of his last name that actually really does wrestle for real. You know, he's I mean, one of the many. Not every fighter has that, but I don't know. I'm going to lean Andreas Gustafsson in this fight. A part of that is I want to go with the fun pick, man. I want to be right. I want to be on the right side of history. It's going to be fun to be right on this. I'll be honest. I think this is like a 50-50 fight. I really do. And partly that's because we don't know that much about Andreas Gustafsson. Because, again, Chaos Williams, I know he's dangerous, but he's literally just got power, and that's it. Rinat has a lot of power, but he's better on the feet. He's a much better grappler. He's actually, despite the fact that he gets tired in fights, he doesn't have as bad of a gas tank as people think. But I will admit that he does slow down, and there's no signs of Andreas Gustafsson slowing down. I'm going to go with Andreas Gustafsson. I think he's going to bring this fight to the clinch. This fight is going to only be in the clinch. And I think he's going to outwork Rinat Fakhretdinov, make it a very physical fight, smother Rinat, and I think second and third round he takes over. I'm going to go with Andreas Gustafsson by a decision in a barn burner clinch striking match, or I'm going to pick him to win by late third round TKO. However, again, if you pick Rinat Fakhretdinov, I think it makes sense. He's fought, faced, and beat better levels of competition than Andreas Gustafsson has. And again, Gustafsson did destroy Chaos Williams, but I feel like, and to be fair, Chaos Williams has never been broken like that, but, you know, he's been beat plenty times. Either way, Andreas Gustafsson, I'm picking him 51% chance. All right. And I hope he wins. I'm rooting for Andreas Gustafsson. He's got a really fun style. Let's get on to the next one. Marcin Tybura versus Ante Delija. Tybura is obviously a free man. That's going to make a big difference. Ante Delija, despite the fact that he has the vibe because he's still got the black cut out, you don't even see the photo. He's got the vibe of an NPC heavyweight. He does indeed train with Tom Aspinall. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Tom Aspinall beat Marcin Tybura, and Ante Delija is getting tips and tricks on how to beat Marcin Tybura from Tom Aspinall. That doesn't mean anything, okay? Abu Bakr, dude. Abu Bakr trains with Habib, doesn't mean anything, all right? Ante Delija, I don't care how many tips and tricks he learns from Tom Aspinall. He's not Tom Aspinall. He doesn't have the speed, doesn't have anything that Aspinall has. Ante Delija, he is an old man from another promotion. Marcin Tybura is a not as old man from the UFC. I mean, you really don't have to look that much deeper into it. Marcin Tybura, he's got a crafty check hook, and he's actually got one of the most underrated ground games in heavyweight history. I would honestly say Marcin Tybura is a top 15 heavyweight grappler of all time. I stand by that. I think that Jailton Almeida, Aspinall, there's some guys that were better. Marcin Tybura, look at his record. You're going to find a lot of ground and pound TKOs. You're going to find a lot of drown people in late waters TKOs. Did it to, what's that guy's name? The heavyweight glory kickboxer that's fighting on the Rio de Janeiro card. I forget his name. Rinat Denis. Whooped his ass. This is probably what's going to happen. Marcin Tybura, Ante Delija, heavyweight slop fest, striking fest on the feet. Big bopper shots, but no real sting on them because they're both tubby heavyweights. But Marcin Tybura, real heavyweight, real person, eventually going to find a real takedown with real ground and pound, and will get himself a real TKO and put a stamp on it as a real person. Now, Ante Delija is a real person. He's a real person. He's from the PFL. NPC heavyweights were never in the PFL. I'm going with Marcin Tybura, man. I'm going Marcin Tybura by ground and pound TKO breaking. Ante Delija. Let's get on to the next one. Rhys McKee versus Alex Sola. Despite the fact that Rhys McKee has really lost damn near every single fight that he's had in the UFC, he's getting closer and closer against decent and decenter levels of competition every single time. I'm picking him to beat Axel Sola. Okay? Having a close fight with Chidi Njokuani, split decision, close fight with Angelusa, man, I mean, Rhys McKee has almost got himself the nod. He is so close to getting his hand raised. I'm picking him. Rhys McKee is kind of the definition of a tough out, right? He is the absolute definition of a tough out. And if you're almost out toughing out Angelusa, I'm picking you over a UFC debutant. All right, Rhys McKee gets this one done. Oumar Sy versus Brendson Ribeiro. Brendson Ribeiro, I've said this in the past, he looks like the scariest person of all time. He looks like Alex Pereira 2.0, but he's a glass cannon. He's basically Johnny Walker 2.0. Okay? He's got the reach advantage in damn near every single one of his fights, except for this, which is even worse. Brendson Ribeiro has a reach advantage over everyone. This time he's got the reach disadvantage. Oumar Sy is going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. Oumar Sy is going to have a 1-inch height advantage. And Oumar Sy had one of the most boring fights of all time. I question whether or not he's going to be able to really impose his will in this fight, but typically what we see after a fighter that's relatively new to the UFC has an absolute stinkfest and people start calling them the most boring fighter of all time, they typically bounce back with a really entertaining or regular entertaining fight. So I think Oumar Sy will, after that loss to Alonzo Menafield, which was a fight in which literally nothing happened, it was one of those decisions where I think in my opinion, they just gave it to Alonzo Menafield because Oumar was expected to win. He was the favorite and he did so little. He did fuck all in that fight. They were like, all right, you shit the bed here. We're just going to give it to the other guy that also did nothing, but you were expected to win, so we're pissed off at you. I don't know. I'm picking Oumar Sy. I think he's probably going to win this by decision. Does he put his stamp on it? I don't know. I think Brendson Ribeiro, he's been knocked out a couple times, just got KO'd by Azamat Murzakanov, has been KO'd by Zhang Mingyang. He's dangerous in his own right, but again, he's a bit of a glass cannon. I just don't know if Oumar Sy's really got the level of striking and the ability to impose his will to knock out Brendson Ribeiro. I think Oumar Sy is one of these. He's like a bigger version of William Gomis, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of his fights. I think he can be pretty boring. I'm rooting for Brendson Ribeiro, but I got to go with Oumar Sy. I think he's going to win this one by point fighting. It's going to fucking suck most likely, but it should be more entertaining than his last fight because I don't see how it's possible to be worse than his last fight. Let's get on to Patricio Pitbull versus Losene Keita. Losene Keita, I forget the promotion that he's been fighting in, but he's super fast, extremely fast. He's a speed merchant, and he's got decent hands. You would expect him to have more KOs if you watch some of his highlights. His highlight tapes are just him landing few and far in between combinations. I have a feeling that Losene Keita is basically Patricio Pitbull, but faster. And what I mean by that is Patricio Pitbull's never been slow, but he's getting older, right? He throws 1-2s. The most strikes you're going to see out of Patricio Pitbull in a combination is 2. It's a 1-2. Losene Keita is a Patricio Pitbull that's in his prime, faster, and will throw 3 pieces and 4 pieces sometimes. However, Patricio Pitbull getting a win over Dan Ige. Again, not a whole lot happened in that fight. Typical Pitbull, ole fest. Do I think Pitbull, with his wealth of experience, now that he's got a couple of real UFC fighters that he's fought that were relatively high level, like Yair Rodriguez and Dan Ige, now that he's fought those guys, will he be able to, after having those experiences, school and son a rookie like Losene Keita? Maybe, but I'm actually going to go with Losene Keita, and I'm going to pick him to win by more activity. I just think Pitbull's a little bit too stuck in the ole thing. I think he is. I think it's going to be the slowest fight on the card, even slower than the fight before. I'm picking Losene Keita. I think he's going to beat Pitbull to the punch. I think he, like Pitbull, is a low output merchant, and I actually think low output merchants against other low output merchants, what decides who's going to win is who's throwing more punches in their combinations and who's faster. I think this is a stylistic matchup where I favor the faster, slightly more punches thrown per combination kind of fighter. Okay? Because both guys will throw the same amount of punches. One guy will throw 3, one guy will throw 2 at a time. I favor the guy that's going to go with 3. Now, maybe Pitbull pulls out his grappling and is able to out-grapple Losene Keita, who's not really proven his grappling that much, maybe we see that, but still, it's an ole fest. If you didn't get a good night of sleep, if you don't get a good night of sleep, I should say, the night before, you may want to get some shut-eye during this, okay? This is going to be tough to stay awake while watching. I'll just say that. It's going to be the slowest output. Oley, oley. And you know the French crowd is crazy. The French crowd is absolutely crazy. Probably the best crowd in MMA. They're going to be fighting back the urge to sleep during this one. So expect an ole. Ziam versus Kaue Fernandes. Kaue Fernandes coming off a win against Guram Kutate. The Guram fight, that was like a symphony. It was like one of those overly dramatic symphony scenes in a movie where, you know, Guram was getting leg kicked and he was falling. I think he got dropped with the leg kick in every single round. Couldn't have been worse for Guram. It was like overly dramatic symphony, orchestra, classical orchestra kind of music while Guram was falling all over the place left and right, symbolizing the end of the Guram Kutaledze hype forever. But for SCM's been building a sneaky resume. For SCM has beaten Mike Davis. He has beaten a lot of I think it was Claudio Puelles he got a win against. For SCM has been getting a ton of wins. He's on like a 6-fight win streak. I'm going to favor for SCM. Both guys are sort of decision merchants, to be fair. I know for SCM got a nasty knockout against, what was his name? Matt Frivola. Needed the dome. But still, I don't know, man. I mean, SCM's one of those fighters where you're never going to be that hyped to watch a SCM fight. Okay, you can't really think back to any banger SCM fights outside of the knockout he had, the knee to the dome against Frivola. Kaue Fernandes, we know him for what he did against Guram Kutate. I'm going to go with the guy that's on the longer win streak, okay? Like, what, you want me to get into the freaking weeds on this? Let's relax, okay? Let's get on to Modestas Bukauskas versus Paul Craig. I'm going with Modestas Bukauskas. I'm going with Bukauskas. I think if there's any training partner of Tom Aspinall that actually is going to have a little ability to pick some things up, it's the lean Modestas Bukauskas, who's a light heavyweight, not a fat, tubby heavyweight. Okay? I'm going with Modestas because although Paul Craig is no longer at middleweight and he's bringing his lighter man skill up, and to be fair, I understand that he for the most part fought at light heavyweight. Paul Craig's an old man. I don't think he's got it anymore, to be honest. And there was a time in which Paul Craig would surprise us with a blast double leg every now and then, but for the most part, in order to get submitted by Paul Craig, you gotta kind of fall into his trap. And I don't think Modestas Bukauskas is a guy that's going to be falling and flailing around the octagon. I think Modestas Bukauskas, since his injury to Khalil Roundtree, he's going to have a sturdy base after all of the rehabilitation he's done, and he's going to go in here and keep it standing. He's going to be the bigger, stronger, more in his prime fighter. I think he's going to be able to beat Paul Craig via striking. Now, you would expect him to KO Paul Craig, but then again, Paul Craig has that ability to just not get KO'd by people that aren't really that good. And even though I think Modestas Bukauskas is the better striker, he's not that good. But I am going to favor him to win this fight, namely because Paul Craig is kind of washed, in my opinion. Okay, prime Paul Craig, I probably pick him to win, but I'm going to go with Bukauskas. Bukauskas just got off of a fight in which he didn't really do a lot of anything. But either way, let's get on to the next one. Balaji versus Mason Jones. Balaji had a pretty good fight in his last outing at the Apex. High output Balaji making a return. His first couple of fights in the UFC were really boring, super low output. Mason Jones is going to force Balaji to bring the output back. I am going to go with Mason Jones. Even though he just beat Jeremy Stephens, who's kind of washed, his performance against Jeremy Stephens was very good. Very well-rounded striking, decent boxing, great kicks, good grappling. He's got it all. And I think he's got a really good ability to push a crazy pace. I'm going to favor Mason Jones. I just think he's the more well-rounded fighter. He's better at imposing his will. He's more consistent when it comes to imposing his will. And I think he's the better finisher. I think he's got a pretty good submission game. And I think he can mix and match his grappling and his striking up pretty well. So I'm going to go with Mason Jones. I'm picking him again just because I think he imposes his will better. Balagioki has had some fights in which sometimes he doesn't really do a whole lot. I'll go with Mason Jones, but this is probably going to be a fun fight. Let's get on to Benoit Saint Denis versus Mauricio Ruffy. And I said I was going to come through with a good prediction, guys, and I'll tell you this. I'm picking Benoit Saint Denis. I'm picking Benoit Saint Denis. He's getting this one done, and I'll tell you why. It's all going to come down to whether or not Benoit shows up with a fight IQ. Even though when I was rewatching Benoit Saint Denis' last fight against Kyle Prepolek, already knowing what is going to happen, already knowing the outcome of that fight, I was still cringing in moments because of how hittable, how open he is, and how slow he is on the feet. However, a part of me thinks that Benoit Saint Denis was fighting with no respect for Prepolek because he dominated him in the first round, and Prepolek took it on short notice and is not known for being a dangerous striker, and therefore Benoit felt comfortable to just bulldoze forward with no respect. I have a feeling that we see Benoit Saint Denis fight with a slightly higher IQ in this fight. And I have a feeling if he fights with a slightly higher IQ and has an ounce of respect for Mauricio Ruffy, I see him winning. I think Mauricio Ruffy needs a space. And I think people are overhyping Mauricio Ruffy. Now, I will change my tune if he proves me wrong and KOs Benoit Saint Denis. I think it's possible that he KOs him. The point is, if I'm confronted with new evidence, if Mauricio Ruffy showcases good takedown defense and is able to KO Benoit Saint Denis, of course I'm going to say, all right, he's the real deal, man. This is like the first legit fighter he's literally beat, right? The first legit fighter. I'm not saying Benoit Saint Denis is super elite. I'm just saying this is a big step up in competition compared to Jamie Horrible Malarkey and James Yontop and Bobby No Chin Green. Bobby Green used to be a great fighter. That would have been a good win a couple of years ago in 2025 and 2024. I'm sorry, Bobby Green's one of the most beatable fighters in the UFC. The point is, we're excited for this fight because it is a step up in competition, because it is against a fighter that has the opposite style and wants to drag Mauricio Ruffy into a realm in which he's not had to fight in a lot, which is the grappling. And as I said in my preview, I think it's more likely that we see Benoit Saint Denis get in the clinch and start working for a takedown or working the clinch striking before Mauricio Ruffy puts him out cold. I'm not saying Mauricio Ruffy can't put him out cold after surviving an early grappling exchange and getting up to his feet or doing all right in the clinch striking. I'm just saying it's more likely that we see that first. And the point that I'm making is, even though Benoit Saint Denis has had some tough luck recently, Poirier, it's the fucking chair. It's the chair, guys. It's the frickin' chair. Even though Benoit Saint Denis has had some tough luck, he's still, in his fights, kicks ass 90% of the time. Yeah! Yeah, son. Yeah! Even against Poirier, I know people are going to say, oh, Poirier was pulling guillotines and Poirier was having fun. Poirier, yes, was pulling guillotines because he probably felt comfortable in that fight, but nonetheless, Poirier did not choose to get his ass kicked in the clinch for multiple minutes at a time. Poirier did not choose to get elbowed over and over and over again and get his back taken. He did not choose for that to happen. He was put there against his will. Benoit Saint Denis, even though he got hit with some big shots and looked slow as a tortoise and his defense is still kind of shit against Kyle Prepolek, he absolutely dog-walked Prepolek in the first round with grappling, ran a grappling clinic on him, and in the second round bullied him and absolutely beat the fuck out of him in the clinch and then submitted him. Benoit Saint Denis has been pretty dominant throughout his career. I know, lost to Poirier. I know, lost to Moicano. Those are two phenomenal fighters. Dustin Poirier is one of the best fighters of all time. Renato Moicano had an amazing first round, and if Renato Moicano can get control of you on the ground early, he's going to be a problem. Let me remind you that the second round was different. It was on the striking, and Renato Moicano's, it'd be one thing if we saw a guy like Moicano tune up in Benoit Saint Denis. Moicano's not known for being the best striker. then I would be worried. And then I would say, well, you don't have to be Poirier to get this guy out of here, right? I don't think you have to be, the level of Poirier to get him out of there necessarily. I'm just saying, listen, I understand that Mauricio Ruffy has a huge advantage in the striking. I get that. I think Mauricio Ruffy is going to be tagging Benoit Saint Denis, even if Benoit Saint Denis goes in with a slightly higher IQ. I just think that in this fight, Benoit Saint Denis will be a little bit more defensively sound on the feet. Instead of throwing punches, he's going to stick behind his body kicks. And I think he's really just going to save his energy for the clinch and the grappling. I do not see Benoit Saint Denis throwing a lot of punches in this fight. And I think Benoit Saint Denis is super strong in the grappling. I think he's super underrated in the grappling. And against a guy like Mauricio Ruffy that slows down in fights, I favor Benoit Saint Denis. Every time Mauricio Ruffy's been in the third round, he's looked really tired. Okay? Like, he looked exhausted against Yantop, lost the third round. Even in his Contender Series fight, in which he got the finish in the third round, he looked very tired. Both guys were absolutely exhausted. I just think people are underestimating Benoit because he's been clowned by Poirier, and he got a lot of hype from me, and he got a lot of hype from other people as well. And I think it's easy to look past him, but again, keep in mind this is not someone that's going to be fighting Mauricio Ruffy at range. Okay, Mauricio Ruffy, it's on him to prove that he can stop a very strong and technical grappler. Benoit Saint Denis, not only is his wrestling underrated, but as I said, super strong. He has a judo background as well, and his grappling, his jiu-jitsu, his submission game is legit. This guy ran through Ismael Bonfim, ran through him. Kyle Prepelic, I know we took it on short notice, and he's not the level of Mauricio Ruffy, but he's running through these people on the ground. And you have to be good. I'm sorry, but you can't just be an average Joe Schmo and beat the fuck out of Poirier and take his back and whoop his ass in the clinch. I know Poirier was making mistakes. I get it. But still, I think there's something to be said about that. And so I'm not here saying that Mauricio can't win. I'm just saying I think it's more likely that we see Benoit Saint Denis get into a grappling exchange, into the clinch striking early. And I think that he is going to be better than Mauricio Ruffy. Now, Mauricio Ruffy hasn't had to show his grappling that much. He hasn't had to show his clinch striking, dirty clinch striking that much. Maybe he excels there. We haven't seen it. If he shows me it, he proves me wrong. I'm presented with new evidence, and I'm looking at Mauricio Ruffy in a way that I didn't look at him before, because now he's showing me things that he's never shown us. Okay? But right now, from what I've seen, he's someone that really likes his space, likes to be at range on the feet, circling around, and he's been made very uncomfortable when people have pressured him, and this is a different kind of pressure. Now, I will say this, James Yantop, better boxer than Benoit Saint Denis, high guard, more defensively sound than Benoit Saint Denis. So it's not crazy that James Yantop had success with a 10-pound weight advantage and taking that fight, on short notice. I think it kind of favored him a little bit in a way because, again, he was able to come in 10 pounds heavier than Mauricio, which helps your gas tank and chin. But either way, I just think Benoit, if he doesn't let his hands go that much and he really just tries to clinch and grapple, I think he's going to win this fight. All right. I know Mauricio Ruffy may have stuffed a couple of takedowns against this Contender Series Dagestani, but it's like, okay, so what? Benoit Saint Denis is a legit grappler. If he's like Andreas Gustafsson, I can trust him to impose his will every single time. I can trust him to do that. And I think that if you're getting tired against these guys that don't push half the pace of Benoit Saint Denis, I think one round, if Benoit Saint Denis has success early, I think he's on route to getting a finish. So I'm picking Benoit. But again, I know Benoit is very open. I know he's slow. I know he can get caught. But he's got a pretty good chin, man. And I think that he's not going to try to strike a lot. I think he's really going to do a whole lot of nothing out at range. And I think he's going to force Mauricio Ruffy to overthrow in moments, to get takedowns and whatnot. And I see him having success in this fight and getting this done by a third round submission or TKO. I'll go with Benoit Saint Denis. Fraud checking Mauricio Ruffy. Let's get on to the next one. Nassourdine Imavov versus Ciao Borralho. This is a tough fight to pick. They're very evenly matched. Both fighters very well-rounded, good on the feet, good on the ground. But I am going to pick Nassourdine Imavov, and I'm predicting him to win a close 48-47 decision. And I think the judges give him the nod, in part because it'll be a close competitive fight, but he is in France. The crowd is going to sway those judges. Whether or not they're conscious of it, the crowd is going to be super loud when Nassourdine Imavov is landing his punches. They're going to be super loud when he's landing those teeps up the middle. If Ciao Borralho has a moment where he rocks Imavov, Imavov's moment's going to be 10 times greater than that because of how the crowd will erupt. And so I do think the judges in a close fight will be swayed by the crowd a little bit, whether they understand that or not, okay? But I'm also going with Imavov because, again, I think this is a very evenly matched fight. I don't see Borralho having an edge in the grappling, nor do I see Imavov having the edge in the grappling. I think the grappling cancels out. And I do think Imavov, the one thing I would favor Ciao Borralho to have over him is the gas tank. Imavov has slowed down here and there in fights, but honestly, recently, I mean, he caught a second wind against Cannonier. Third, fourth round, those were his rounds. Against Strickland, his best round in that entire fight was the fourth and the fifth round. Those were his best rounds. So I don't know. I feel like the cardio issues of Imavov have been overblown a little bit. And even if they weren't, he's definitely looked better in later rounds recently, especially after having, a lot of experience. But I am picking Imavov because I think he has the advantage in the long, rangy striking. I think that both guys have good boxing. They're both very different boxers, but I think that Imavov has the better 1-2s down the pipe. Super fast and powerful with his right hand. We saw him knock out Adesanya with that right hand. Ciao Borralho, he's got a pretty crispy jab. He's got decent left straights. He's a southpaw. But I think he's really good with his counter hooks and whatnot, like his check hooks, and his tight pocket boxing might be a little bit better than Imavov. But I favor Imavov with volume because of his kicks. I think he's got the much more versatile striking game. I think he's got more techniques to offer. Knee stomps, front kicks to the midsection. He can match Borralho with the leg kicks. He's just capable of fighting a very rangy style with his kicks. And I think the boxing is pretty even, but I think Imavov is going to have the advantage when it comes to kicking range. And therefore, I think that he will edge out the striking rounds. He'll be able to land more strikes because he'll be able to kick and land more kicks than Borralho will be. Okay? Also, I think Imavov has the much better chin. Imavov, I've never seen him rocked in his entire career. Nassourdine Imavov has one of the best chins, most underrated chins in the UFC. Nobody has been able to crack him. People have landed big punches on him. That's Jared Cannonier, even Sean Strickland. That was like the one fight Sean Strickland ever was really sitting on punches. Didn't affect Nassourdine Imavov. Buckley didn't affect Nassourdine Imavov. Curtis didn't affect Nassourdine Imavov. This guy has an uncrackable chin, and he's shown us in those gritty, scrappy moments, that makes a big difference. In those scrappy moments against Cannonier, that made a difference. He was able to out-grit Cannonier in those, crazy exchanges. Ciao Borralho has a pretty good chin, but I don't trust it as much. And ultimately, if you look at Nassourdine Imavov and you look at the people that he's fought, he's got a lot more experience and his resume is sick. I mean, these are the names that Borralho has beat. Let me just, list them off, at least the relevant ones. Recently, Jared Cannonier, and keep in mind, he beat Cannonier a couple months removed from Cannonier losing to Imavov. So I don't even know if that was necessarily the best time for Cannonier to get back in the octagon. That was a very quick turnaround. I feel like his chin may have been effective, even though he wasn't put out for real against Imavov, because that was one of the most early stoppages ever. Having a scrap with Imavov a couple months earlier did not help his chin. But Cannonier, okay. Before that, it was Paul Craig. Before that, it was Abu Smagomedov. And before that, it was Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, which is, in hindsight, a very good win, but he took him to the ground. It's not like he outstruck him. Those are pretty good, but let me list off Imavov's former wins. Adesanya, by KO. Jared Cannonier, Brendan Allen, okay? Joaquin Buckley, Chris Curtis. I know the Chris Curtis fight, technically it was, a no contest, but he was whooping Chris Curtis's ass. So Chris Curtis, Buckley, Adesanya, Cannonier, did pretty well against Strickland. And again, he was a lot younger in his career. He finished Edmund Shabazian. Nassourdine Imavov, as I said, Brendan Allen as well. Nassourdine Imavov has been putting together a very, very solid resume at middleweight. And I'm going to favor him to win this one, okay? Again, I think both guys have very good hands, different styles of boxing, but one guy, better chin, one of the best chins in the UFC. Also, I think that both guys are pretty even when it comes to speed, but Nassourdine Imavov has the better kicking game, and I think he's going to have the ability to do better in that kicking distance, okay? And I think it's pretty even in the boxing exchanges, and I think the grappling exchanges are pretty even as well. And Imavov is going to have a 2-inch height advantage. Both guys even on reach, but Imavov, again, capable of fighting that long, rangy style at times. The French crowd is going to make a difference. They're going to be getting behind Imavov. That might be able to sway the judges a little bit subconsciously. And so I think Imavov edges out a tough-fought decision. I think it's going to go 5 rounds. I don't see either fighter getting a finish. I think this could start off being really slow because both fighters, again, they kind of understand this is likely a number 1 contenders fight. And they're going to be nervous. Whenever you're in a perceived number 1 contenders fight, you're going in there nervous. And sometimes instead of imposing your will to really win, you're just trying not to get KO'd. You're trying not to make a mistake more than you're trying to capitalize on something. So we could see both of these guys going in there extra cautious. Okay, really trying not to overextend on anything. So expect a slow start, but I think even in a slow start, I favor Imavov, who can be chipping away with the kicks at range, with the front kicks up the middle. And again, Borralho, very powerful and explosive, but I do not see him cracking the chin of Nassourdine Imavov. And I think Nassourdine Imavov has sleeper power. I think he's got power that's easy to overlook. Okay, so I'm going with Imavov by a 48-47. That is my prediction. Hope you guys enjoyed. And if he's able to beat Ciao Borralho, that's going to be one of the best resumes ever before getting to a title. And he absolutely does deserve the title shot, even though I would prefer to see the winner of De Ridder and Fernandes fight for the belt next. I mean, listen, I don't mind Imavov fighting for the title if he wins this. Same thing with Ciao Borralho, but ideally I would like to wait until Khamzat fights the winner of Reiner De Ridder and Fernandes. So the winner of this can just be a reserve for the next title fight. But either way, should be a slow start, but should be a fun fight. Until next time.